So if I go out for my 16-mile run and a mile and a half into it I've got knee pain, I'm going to change my technique. So I might start to take my knees up a little bit higher as I run, or curl my heels right back up to my glutes, to my backside. And so those are just two different ways of running. If you're doing both of those things, it means you're running very fast by default if you're bringing your knees up really high and you're curling back, because you kind of have to be in a huge flow to do that. So a really strong runner is going to have very high knees and heels coming up at the back. Did anyone see the Great Ireland Run a few months ago? Bekele came over from Ethiopia and absolutely devoured the fields. But we got him on speed camera running, and it's just beautiful. It's just so graceful to watch this guy running. So anyway, the perfect run is high knees and heels curling up at the back. But that's a run. And most people doing their first marathon are doing a jog. Okay, so a jog is obviously a much slower thing, much smaller range of movement. And the problem with jogging is that you're hammering one part of like mainly the quads on the front of your thighs again and again and again and again. So it is ideal to change the flow of that movement as much as you can. And this is going to come, so let's take joint pain first of all. So with joint pain, I'll change my strategy. And hopefully that's going to get rid of the joint pain. But if the joint pain is still there, then I'm basically going to stop running and walk till I get home and get on my bike, because running is high impact exercise and cycling a bike isn't. And thankfully from my triathlon experience, I've learned that cycling a bike, and this isn't just me, this is tried and tested, so cycling is going to improve your run. So to me, cycling is an absolute fundamental part of my running training, because it's intelligent, because it's lower impact, and also because you've got this circular movements on your legs, it's actually training you for a nicer gait or running style as you go. Okay, and finally, so basically if joint pain won't go away from changing my flow, then I'm going to absolutely stop, walk, go low impact, and I'm going to go back to the drawing board and go, what happened here? Maybe it was too quick after a long run. Maybe I'm just too tired after the last run and I only slept 4 hours and therefore my body hasn't recovered since the last run. So the beauty of the marathon is, yeah, you're going to grow as a person, but you're also going to really get a mastery of your own body and understand every time there's a little niggle, you learn to work around it. And how many people have jogged and felt a niggle somewhere, like a sore knee or that kind of thing? Okay, so everybody's felt something like that, right? So generally a niggle will become an injury if it's not addressed. So definitely don't ignore it. The biggest bit of advice I have for you for the whole night is to address fear. So we're all concerned about not finishing the marathon or not getting our ideal time, but the danger is if you let fear start to dictate your behaviors. So if you've got a little bit of a niggle in your knee and you know, oh man, I'm right on for a sub 4 hour marathon or a sub 3.5 hour marathon, if I just keep going, then the temptation is to just let that fear come in and go, okay, I'll just ignore the niggle on my knee, and the niggle is going to become an injury if you don't address it head on early on. So we talked about changing pace. So we talked about bringing up knees and curling up at the back to just take the impact off the joints. And to answer the man at the back's question, another way of doing that is to change your entire running style. So that's kind of like flow techniques is what I'd call them. I don't know what the technical term is, but you can actually alter your speed. So interval training or fartlek training just means you go fast, slow, fast, slow. That's what intervals are. So I would do intervals fast for 1 and slow for 3. So that might just be lamppost to lamppost. I'll sprint for a lamppost and then jog for the next 3 lampposts, then sprint and jog again. If you were paying me 75 quid an hour as a personal trainer, that's basically what we do on about session 2 or 3. It's that simple. That is the fastest way to get to marathon and the safest way, because you're alternating between your high impact running and low impact. I personally think it's safer to run a marathon than to jog a marathon. So because you're more in the flow, you're using your entire body rather than this kind of repetitive bang, bang, bang on the same parts of the muscle. So to answer the question about speeds of training, I definitely do interval training regularly where you're speeding up and slowing down. During the actual race, you can use that as a strategy where you say, for example, a man that hit the wall last year, one possibility in that situation is to walk for a minute, jog for a minute, run for a minute, back to walking. And that will take the pain away in some ways, and it'll flush out the lactic acid that's built up in the muscles, that kind of thing. So, is there a glaring question that I've missed? I just want to double check my list of questions that you've asked. So, club. Do I join a club? Is basically the question. Right. Okay, there's two things I suggest you do. Get great people around you. And also sometimes it's really motivational to have someone that you're really encouraging and you've really dragged them out to do it. So I told you about my first marathon where I gave out about my friend's wife who started bawling crying at the 20-mile mark. But to be honest with you, if she hadn't have been there with me for the whole thing, I probably would have started walking at some point. My focus was on encouraging her along, so I wasn't focused on my own pain. And still in triathlon, if I really start to suffer in Austria on Sunday, one of my strategies will be smiling and encouraging other people to keep going, because that just takes me out of my own world of pain for a few minutes. Do I join a club? Okay, this is kind of the same as, do I listen to the guy in the office who runs marathons? Okay, you got to be really careful with the guy in the office who runs marathons, and you got to be really careful with joining a club, because there's people who are good at running, or people who are just getting good at running, or people even who are experts at running, and they can all give great tips and advice. Okay, I don't listen to any of them. I go to someone who's a master of running, right? So I only go to someone who's an absolute top of the game and absorb what they're teaching. So I go to someone like Jerry Duffy, who's run 32 marathons in 32 days. I go to Chris McCormick, who I've got his book up here, who's a 2-times Ironman world champion. And I find that the advice that they give is much more relaxed. They're not striving and desperately trying to get their own 3-hour 45 marathon or whatever. They're not trying to impress me in the triathlon club or the running club or in their office. So sometimes at a running club, it's the guy that maybe sits back, or the lady who sits back taking people's names, who you find out was in the Olympics 10 years ago but isn't currently running, and not sometimes the current athletes that are out there that give the best advice. Because people by nature, we want to make ourselves sound important. So the last person to ask advice is someone who's just done their first marathon, right? Because someone who's just done their first marathon thinks they're a legend for getting across the line, and they are. Okay, so it's an amazing thing, but they're going to say to you, that was a world of pain at the wall, that was like the hardest thing I've ever done. And that's not what you need to hear. You want to hear someone who's done 32 marathons in 32 days consecutively, who goes, we had a guy out on day 3 and he'd only ever run 5k in his life and he ran an entire marathon. And you know, that's what you need to hear. And masters stick around long enough to hear all those stories, to learn how to avoid the injuries. So I would say surround yourself, get a master, and really learn from them, right? Really study what they're saying and take their advice. They're generally very peaceful about it. And ideally, I'd get a few friends on board as well and encourage them to come along, but don't take advice from them, take advice from the master. And for me, competition works really well. So I'm competitive. So if I've got a friend that I'm competitive with, that's where it works in a club setting for me, that I can compete against somebody else. And that brings out the best in me. So I'd say, yeah, get a group of people, whether it's a club or not, and also get someone who you really admire and respect, and go for it, and take advice off them, and be careful about the advice